Hi and welcome to this video. In this video, we are going to start looking at assistive technologies itself. And what I want to do in some of the subsequent videos and this video is not look at very complicated assistive technologies. I want to look at very simple things that can help people, right? And of course, as engineers, you can think of more complicated things as well. Okay, so uh, j- let's start. So just to remind you of what we have been looking at, we have been looking at assistive technology from the HAT, using the HAT model. And we've been saying we need to take into account the context of the context, the human element, the activity, and before we design the assistive technologies, isn't it? So in this particular video, we are going to look at the activity, which is basically manipulation. How can we manipulate things around you easily? And the activity basically we can define as carrying, moving, or manipulating objects. Okay, so that's what we want to do. Okay, now what's the context? Now, in the context, we can talk about things like, do the assistive technologies that we offer, are they acceptable? Are they socially acceptable? So if you start using assistive technology, and I'll show you a few examples in a moment, does that automatically attach a stigma to you in the society? And that wouldn't be very nice, isn't it? Because that would stop people from using these assistive technologies. That's kind of the cultural context. But you could also have kind of the institutional or the physical context, in the sense that, are these assistive technologies easily available in the market? Or do you really have to work very hard to get these assistive technologies? And that creates its own problems, right? So we need to look at the context as well. The human aspect of it is the fact that people have limited range of motion. Probably they have limited strength to manipulate things. Maybe they have pain in various joints. Maybe they have problems with their body because of which they can't do activities with both sides of the body. Or maybe they just have some deformities in the hands, or other deformities which don't allow them to manipulate objects as normally people could, right? So what kind of assistive technologies could help? Let's take a look. So one of the things that we have already talked about are, you could have mouth sticks and head pointers that actually allow you to manipulate various things, right? So for example, if you can't use your hands to reach and move certain things, what you could have is, you could have a mouth stick, a stick which you can hold in your mouth, and you can move certain things or touch certain things or manipulate certain things. Or you could wear a head pointer, right? A pointer that is connected to your head, and you have a pointer coming out, and you can use your head motion to touch or manipulate various things. Maybe you have a limited range of motion, you can move your hands, but not, your range is very limited. So then you can have a reacher, essentially, let's say, a stick in your hand, and you just use small movements to manipulate objects. So those are some very simple aids that can really go a long way in helping people, right? Imagine, and this is something that we do in daily life. Let's say you're playing a game and you sprain your back, right? And you really can't bend your back. And you want to pick up a thing from the floor. What do? You pick up a stick and use that stick to kind of bring a thing near you, isn't it? So you are compensating for the disability that you have, which is basically a stiff back, by using a reacher. And that's assistive technology, a technology that is assisting you to do some things. There are various kinds of special purpose aids that can be given for people to enable them to do the tasks of daily living, right? So for example, here you can look at this pen grabber, a place where you can actually put your pen, and then you can use your entire hand to write instead of using your fingers to write, in case you can't do that. Here you have a key holder which you can use to turn keys. I don't know whether you've noticed that some people really have struggle with putting the key into the keyhole. Oh, sometimes I do. especially if it's dark, to fit the key into the keyhole, right? And maybe this key holder, which is slightly bigger, helps people to do it much more easily. You could have aids to help you in eating. For example, look at this spoon. It's a bendable spoon, right? Which probably um, um, doesn't obviates the need for you to bend your hand too much while you're eating. Or you can have this plate holders so that you can put a plate, and while you're eating, the plate does not slip off. You can have cup holders like this with big handles so that you can easily hold it and you can use it. You can have cooking utensils uh, uh, with special modifications, like with a long handle, for example, or maybe uh, a, 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 a way of opening jars without using two hands. So that kind of a thing. These are instruments that can be used for dressing and for just daily care. So, for example, look at this nail cutter here, which does not need two hands to operate, right? It's a nail cutter which is put on a stand, and you can just do that with much less fine motor control. And so these kinds of very, very simple aids can really go a long way in helping uh, people with disabilities to live independent lives. And once we talk about these aids, then you can think about the context where they are used. So let's say if I start using one of these equipment, so let's say a pencil with a big grip, uh, and if I use, would it be acceptable socially to use it? Maybe yes, in today's world, right? But in certain societies, people would say, "Oh, you're using that. Something is wrong with you," and you're kind of dismissed. So that becomes a contextual problem that needs to be dealt with. And then you may say, "Well, we really can't use that because that's not really socially acceptable. So then I have to have another type of assistive technology instead of this." So those are issues. So that's how context plays into the use of assistive technologies as well. Of course, we can also talk about uh, how do we select assistive technologies, right? As we have said many, many times, we need to identify what activities are necessary, desired, and meaningful. We have to identify which manipulation functions are problematic, and then we have to identify the personal abilities. So these are the, what should I say, the human element. This is the activity element, and then you identify aspects of the physical, socio-cultural, and institutional context that affect the acquisition and use of these assistive technologies. So this is the contextual problem that you're talking about, the context, right? And then having all these in mind, you then determine the characteristic of the assistive technology and then prescribe it.